So this is a full guide video that covers up all the essentials for you, or the essential commands that you need to master as a front-end developer, how to get started with the terminal, what is a shell, and all the stuff like environment variables, what is the best terminal application to use for your operating system, whether Windows, Mac, or Linux, and much more. So if you want to become a crazy front-end hacker, follow this video. And one quick disclaimer before we jump to the video, of course, this is more of like a beginner-oriented kind of video. So if you're familiar with the terminal, with basic commands like navigations and file system and everything, well, this video is not suited for you. It's more of like beginners who doesn't know about the terminal, and front-end developers who want to get familiar with the terminal to know all the hacks and the actual basic to more of like an intermediate stuff that you need to know about the terminal to work with it. So first things first, you need to choose the right terminal application for you. And as a front-end developer who's just getting started and don't exactly know a lot of stuff about the terminal and the shell and the commands or all this sort of stuff, there are actually two terminals I really recommend for you guys to get started with. One of which is absolutely the best one. I've been using this for the past couple of months, and it's just crazy good. But unfortunately, this one is only available for Mac for now. It's going to be available for Linux and Windows later on. And this one is just so awesome to terminal, as you can see in here. It has so many capabilities. It's open source. There's plenty of stuff about it. The second most used one I see that has been used literally everywhere, and it's being used for among a lot of people and a lot of developers, is called the Hyper terminal in here. And it's built on Electron. It uses HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You don't have to go to the details about this, but this is a very good terminal. So I advise you, if you have a Mac, go with the Warp. If not, just go with the Hyper in here. Now, when it comes to Mac or Linux, it's a little bit easier compared to Windows, because Macs and Linux are already built on top of the Unix operating system, and they have shells built in. So they have access to bash or zsh shell, and you can easily run the commands without any issues. But for Windows, you need to do a little bit more setup. Luckily for us, Microsoft released a couple of months ago the WSL kind of an integration where it allows you to install Linux as a subsystem of Windows, and you can run Linux natively, and you can access literally everything of Linux, including the shell, of course. So you can follow a guide in here on how to install Microsoft. But if you don't want to go through all the cumbersome in here just to install, you can use an application called cmder, which is an emulator for Windows that allows you to run the same exact commands of bash or zsh in Windows. I've been using this. I used this when I was using Windows for development purposes before, and it works flawlessly. So if you already probably heard about the different versions or the different types of shells, obviously the shell is actually the mother, and there's actually derived types from that. There is the bash, there's zsh, there's much more. But the most famous ones and the most used ones around the globe right now are bash and zsh. So bash is mainly for Linux. It's used a lot in Linux distributions. And for zsh, it's mostly for Mac. They are basically the same thing. They have exactly the same syntax. There's just small differences between both of these shell types, but most of the times you're going to find similarities between this. So you need to keep in mind what type of shell you're currently using so you don't fall for traps. All right, cool. Now we can get started learning the actual front-end guide into the terminal, and how can I start it as a front-end developer who literally doesn't know much about the terminal and the fundamentals of all that sort of stuff. So first things first, you need to start with the most basic and the most fundamental stuff, which is managing the file system and managing files, managing directories, deleting directories, and all that sort of stuff. So for example, in here, I'm on my Mac File Explorer in here, and this is exactly like the GUI for the File Explorer. From here, you can create a folder, you can do all the sort of stuff. As we all know, you can move to trash, you can delete, and plenty of things right here. Now, how can we do this same thing faster, 10 times faster? Because in here you need to go and actually find the GUI, right click, and do all this rubbishness that it doesn't really require all that much of thing. And how can you become a hacker and use the terminal to actually go through the advanced stuff in here, from managing the file system to deleting files and directories and much more? Okay, so let's jump to our terminal. I already got my terminal here. I'm using Warp terminal, by the way, and this is my terminal interface. So I'm having full screen here so you can exactly see what I'm doing. And now, for example, actually, if you see a tile in here, and this is the tile character, that means you are inside of home. And what I mean by home is actually where your username is. So it's clear here, Islamabad is my username and this is home. So home in here, you can have all your custom documents or your personal stuff, nothing related to the operating system. So any kind of like an application you install on your computer or something, it's going to have like a configuration. It's going to be put in here, for example, applications and stuff. So this is where home is. All right. So by default, when you open up a shell, you're going to find it like home in here. And when you open up a terminal, you're going to find it by default on the actual home in here. So to check what the directory has, you can use the ls, which stands for list. So if you click enter, you're going to find it, or it's going to give you all the list of files and directories available on the current directory. If you want to know what is the current directory, you can use the pwd, which is print working directory. Click enter, it's going to give me, oh, this is your current working directory. The other most important command is the cd command, which stands basically for change directory. And here you can change directory and go to a different directory. For example, I can go to the source directory in here, which has all my projects and files and source codes and all sort of stuff. So you can do cd and you can go to that, click enter. Now I'm inside of source, and I can do ls and I can find all the projects and files inside of that. Now, one of the awesome capabilities that Warp provides as a terminal in here is actually auto-completion, and it gives you suggestions in a really nice, awesome UI. So for example, I want a cd, but I don't know exactly which like directory I want to go through. And maybe if you have like a lot of directories, I don't know which one I want to go through. So for example, I can do cd, I can press tab, and it's giving me this really nice UI that's going to give me like what are the current available directories. And I can select, for example, oh, I want to go inside, for example, tutorials. Click enter, and now it's going to take me inside of tutorials. So let's say you want to create a new folder inside of the source tutorials folder in here. All you're going to do is actually use the make dir directory, and here after that you're going to specify exclusively a Warp terminal provides us with suggestions. So if you type, like click on the right arrow key or click on the tab, it's going to autocomplete, but I'm not going to do that. So for example, I'm going to create a directory, and I'm going to go and name this like my new folder or something. Click enter. Now if I do ls, I'm going to find my new folder. I probably, because it's yeah, there you go. So this is my new folder has been created for us. And of course you can use cd, you can go to my like new folder in here, click enter, and you can access it as well. Also, if you want to see more details about the current files that are in current directory, like the data created, the author, or the actual guy who created that one. So how can you do that? You can use ls, and you can use the argument keys. These ones, or the keys that you're going to find before it, like a dash or a double dash, those are called argument keys or options. So in here, if I do, for example, -- help, I'm going to check out the help of the ls, and this is where the current help of the current list like command in here, which is the standard command. This is what it gives us in here. It doesn't give us much of things, to be honest, but there is a command called la in here for listing, and it gives you all the details like all. Now it's going to give you all the details about my new folder. So let me just get back. I'm going to do ls-la, and it's going to give me all the details, like the time has been created, yeah, like the the guy or the author of that one. Also, you might have already noticed some new directories or some special directories on empty folders. So if I do ls-la on this empty folder, I'm going to find a dot and a double dot. So what does that mean? So the dot actually refers to the current directory, and a double dot refers to the previous directories. Those are like links to current directory or the previous directory. So for example, if I do cd and a double dot, this will take me out of the my new folder and just take me back to the tutorials. Click enter, and there you go. So if I go back to the home directory in here, which is the tiled in here, and I do ls-la to see all the files, and this as well is going to give you the hidden files. The hidden files always start with a dot. So usually without using the ls-la option in here, you won't be able to get or view these like dot files because they are hidden. So if you use that LA, you're going to be able to view all of those, and there are a plethora of them. Most of these files are actually going to hold just configuration or different scripts that can configure the current environment, the current shell scripts, and much more. Now, there's one specific and very special script that's called the zshrc. Now the zshrc in here, which is for the current shell we're using, which is zsh because we're on Mac, this one actually holds any configuration that when you actually open a new terminal, this particular script is going to be executed before opening that new terminal's shell session. So let's go ahead and edit this one. So for editing a file, there's two ways. And of course, I mean editing a file from a terminal. You can use Vim, which is a very complicated and quite advanced editor, or you can use Nano. Nano is a lot simpler and much easier editor to use from the command line, of course. So all you do is just type in Nano and you give it the file name that you want to edit, or maybe a new file name if you want to give it, like, create a new file. So I'm just going to give it zshrc, and it's going to take me exactly into that file. As you can see, this is what the file has. It has like all of these kind of contents that you probably don't understand, and it goes a bit intimidating for you, but these are all the shell language, and particularly the ZSH shell language. Now, all of these in here are just like some configuration and stuff like that. For example, for setting up the NVM to make it work, we're just doing source and doing nvm sh, which is every single time we're trying to create a new terminal's shell session, this one is going to be like run, and it's going to run this nvm sh to set up everything what we need. Now, let's say something else. For example, I'm going to do an echo, and for an echo in here is a shell command that allows you to print something. It's like print or console.log when it comes to, you know, stuff like that. This is just it's a regular language, or it's a regular programming language, and you put an echo in here. You can, for example, started new terminal session or something. And I'm gonna click in here. I'm gonna click enter, or it doesn't matter. And I'm gonna click Control X, and this will allow me to, oh, do you wanna destroy the changes or save them? I'm gonna click Y. I'm gonna save the same file name. Now we created this new one. Okay, now let's go and create a new session, or create a new shell session, or start a new terminal. I'm gonna do a split pan up, which is gonna create me a new terminal on the same terminal in here. Just gonna split it up, or I can go and do like the top in here, and I'm gonna create a new one. As you can see, the newer one got me started a new terminal session because we put it on that particular file. And the reason why I'm showing you this file for front-end developers, because most of the time you're gonna need to set up some sort of stuff, and this is the place where you need to set up and put config files. Like, for example, setting up NVM, setting up like Puppeteer config in here. You need to export double different like stuff in here, or maybe you're going to be setting up some like front-end kind of like testing library. Most of the times you're going to be dealing with the zshrc in here for putting the config files. Now, the second part is actually managing projects and starting the scripts and using yarn and npm on a regular projects, and how you can do all of that. So for example, on a terminal, I'm accessing the tutorials folder here, which has all my tutorials I put in my videos in here. So let's say I want to go into the lazy loading images, right? And I can just go ahead and do that, and I can clearly easily find that's actually what I'm seeding in here. Now I can use the command code dot to tell, actually I want to open up VS Code on the current project directory. So if I click enter, this will go ahead and open up the new folder in here for me, which is the lazy loading images with the current project on VS Code. Now, as a front-end developer, you are probably familiar with the package managers, which is npm or yarn or any other package manager, and you've probably like already run npm install in your life to install some library, or just npm install to install the whole project from the package.json, or maybe the other package manager is called yarn. But what are these in the first place? They are package managers, of course, but when in a shell kind of an environment, they are like Sequelize or particular small script that allows you to run different stuff. So for example, in here, for instance, if I do npm --help, that's gonna give me all the commands of npm in here, and I can access all the pillar commands of the npm CLI, which is a command line interface that allows you to run different commands and actually have superpowers to installing, managing projects, and doing different stuff. So the most important command that you need to make sure you know about, which is the npm, for example, install, which is the same thing that applies for yarn as well. So npm install in here, and you give it a package or a library that you want to install from the npm registry, which, for example, I'm going to use, for example, Axios. Click enter, and this will go ahead and install this on the node modules. The other one is the npm run, which is the run command in here, and you give it a particular script to run. Now, where do you find these scripts? The scripts are actually in package.json, so if you're familiar with scripts and how they run, the script right over here inside of the scripts, like kind of objects in here, this is what you will be able to run using this command. For example, when I run the start server, it's going to start me the application, which is just a basic React application. So if I do npm run start, this will go ahead and start the server for compiling and making the development server work. And this is the actual application that it started us. It's just a simple application we're working in, but it actually started a server. And what I mean by a server actually always keeps watching for file changes. So if you change any file and it can, like, save that particular file, the server is going to reload and it's going to restart your application. So you're probably already familiar with that. And this is what the server looks like. Now, like seriously, the terminal doesn't stop because this has been taken by the actual server, or by the actual current application or the script you are running. To stop this one, all you need to do is actually Control C. Even on Mac, it's Control C. So you do Control C, and this will go ahead and actually interrupt the actual current server, and it won't actually keep it working anymore. It will just stop it, and it gives you your shell session in here back. The other most important command, which is the remove command, which I should have like covered this in the file system, but I wanted to leave this for a more practical scenario so you can see exactly what it does. So for example, we've got the node module here, which has all the binaries, all the files, all the libraries we installed using the npm and everything. Now let's say I want to completely get rid of every single file and every single directory inside of this one all at once, completely permanently delete that. So I'm going to use the rm, which stands for remove command, -rf, which basically stands for recursive and force to delete any file that you can actually specify. I'm just going to specify node modules, or you can specify whatever you want. So this one will completely go ahead and destroy and remove the node modules. Also, as a front-end developer, you would probably want to use the terminal for your Git stuff. And what I mean by Git is actually the version control, and to basically manage all the version control and put the commands and everything. Of course, there's GUIs and graphical user interfaces and application that allows you to do that. Maybe like the VS Code one, which allows you to easily access and know the changes, commands, and stuff like that. But believe me, it's 10 times faster to run this from the command line. Plus, once you do it from the command line, you will never forget about it. You will never have to memorize this and go to stuff, because you'll always remember, because you are actually typing the things and typing the commands, so you know exactly what you're doing. So the most important command in the Git history in here is using, of course, Git, as you all know. Then you actually use the command called log. Now, the Git log in here allows you to see all the commands, all the history commands with the dates, the authors, and the command sh in here, which is just a particular ID. And of course, you can scroll down to see exactly what's happened on that repo since it has been created. Another cool command as well is actually to track which files has been changed since the last commit. For example, you got plenty of files in here, like VS Code says, like the package.json has been deleted, the .env, and much more. So you can use the git status to actually tells me exactly what stuff. For example, we got deleted package.log.json, maybe modify the package.json, or files that have never been tracked, which means they are completely new and they have been just added, like the .env file in here. So let's go ahead and try to add the files. For example, you can do add, and you can specify a particular file, like the .env file, and this will be added. Now, if I do git status again, no file in here has been staged, and staged file means like whatever commit goes next, whatever you are actually going to put in next commit, these staged files are going to go into the next commit you're going to put. And of course, to make this faster, you need to do just git add with a dot, and this will add every single file, every single change you've put just by a single click. Now, since we've got all the files staged in here, you can use the git commit to actually commit something. And here I'm going to do like new commit or whatever. I'm just going to put that, click enter, and this will go and create a commit. If I do git log, I'm going to see my new commit has just been added. The other important one as well is the git diff command, which allows you to see differences between the current working tree. For example, I got a single change in here, and between any commit you choose. For example, I got this git diff. I'm going to choose the last commit we made in here just a couple of seconds ago. I'm going to put the actual ID or the sh of the current command, click enter, and this will give me the changes of that particular commit. Like we added this and we did a plus in here, and we removed a couple of like a new line and removed this line in here as well. Another essential part about shells and how they actually work with their features and functionalities that I think that every single front-end developer actually needs, which are environment variables. So environment variables are a way to actually specify particular variables for your current shell session, and they are actually usually used to access sensitive data or particular stuff like a password. Maybe you want to set something like an API token. That, of course, these kind of stuff kind of like changes every single time. So every single time you can regenerate an API token, or you can change the password, but you don't want to put a password inside of your application. But still, the application still needs to know the password, and that's all happening via the actual environment variables. So simply to define an environment variable in the shell, just simply use the export command in here, and you can specify an environment variable as any other variable. For example, I can specify like API token, and you can do like equal sign, and you can give it like whatever token in here. For example, I can do this is my custom API token, some randomness, and later on I can use the echo with the $sign API token, and this will open, actually go ahead and like put me and print out the actual token we created, which is saved and actually exported in the current session. Now open a new terminal in here, a new session that doesn't know about this one. If I click enter, it's going to give me empty because this has only been exported and set on the current session. So to set that, we need to go to the nano zsh zshrc, which is obviously the file that we all know and love in here. Let me just go and close this pan in here to be able to view that. And I can do the export API token, whatever in here. And I can just put my custom API token. I click on exit, and actually I can't exit, so save, yes. And now every single time I start a new shell, I will be able to easily access that, and it's going to be available right away. Also, there's another way you can specify environment variables, which probably you're already familiar with, using, for example, the .env, which is, of course, you need some setup, but for React or to create React.CLI in here, you can easily have access to it. So .env, and you can put whatever environment variable, but you have to append or prepend basically React up in here in order to be able to, from the React application, to pick this up. And as crazy, so if I go to the application and do process env to access the environment variables and access that environment variable, I will be able to easily access the token. And the third way you can set environment variables, which are temporal like environment variables, and the third way to set environment variables, which are like temporary environment variables, is exactly before running in command. So for example, I want to run the new, or basically start a new server, start the development server of React. So I want to just put the environment variable first. So I'm going to put React up token, which of course this will actually proceed, and this will overwrite any other environment variable with the same name. So I can just do in here update or something just to check if this has been updated. I actually run my script regular. So simply just do yarn install, click enter, and this will go and install it, of course. And clearly see the console log has token as updated, which means our environment variables are working fine. And for last but not least, there is actually some added stuff I want to just share with you. Of course, there's like optional, you don't exactly need them, but they actually make you a super kind of programmer, kind of / hacker that allows you to use the terminal super fast, and you know, you can feel good about yourself. So first one is actually command chaining. So you can run multiple commands at the same time, like not exactly at the same time, but you run the commands like you put all the commands at a single line, and each command is going to run like one after the other. So for example, I'm going to do remove rf for removing the node modules. So I want to completely remove the node modules, and I want to reinstall those node modules. So you can do use the .end, which is going to use like the command chaining. It's going to allow to remove the node modules first, then after that finishes, it's going to do the yarn install. And maybe if that finishes as well, I can do echo like done or something. And if I click enter, this will go ahead like remove the node modules. It's going to reinstall everything from scratch. You see like it removed the node modules, and it started again for installing node modules. And after that, it's going to put the done. Now, if you go back to our warp terminal here, which has plethora of features that you can choose from. For example, you can use the arrow keys, like the up or down arrow keys, to view and get access to the previously run commands. So you can easily go, for example, to the cd react rocks or something, and you can click on that, and it's going to easily execute that without actually retyping this from scratch. And one of the coolest features I love about Warp, which is the AI command search that allows you to type any text, and that can actually execute it as a command. So you can type it as, you know, pure English or whatever, and it's going to just type it or basically do that for you. So for example, I can do archive, like for example, a folder which is called my remix up. So my remix up as zip. So click enter, and it's going to actually generate this suggestion. So this is actual command. It can open up the actual command or put it as an input, and click enter, and this will go ahead and zip everything inside of that folder just for you, and without even knowing exactly what you're doing. It's very, very nice. And there you go. That's the zip file.